Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So guys, I really highly recommend that you guys listen to this podcast. If you are in the startup space, if you are in the SaaS space or tech space, today's guest is absolutely crushing it. Their company has just hit, $10 million in annual recurring revenue in 3.5 years with, no investor backing at all. So it's absolutely crazy what this guy has done and what their team has done. So today's guest is G. I'm going to call him G just as I might butcher his name and stuff. But yeah, so he's actually the CEO and co-founder of Lemlist. So a sales automation platform. Like I was saying, they've hit over $10 million in annual recurring revenue in only 3.5 years, which is absolutely crazy. He's also a co-founder of Lempire, a company creating amazing SaaS products. And he's also been a TEDx guest speaker, which I recommend you guys go check him out on there. And also he's he's a YouTube content creator. Like this guy's making some amazing content. So I highly recommend that you guys go check him out on YouTube. Follow his journey. Like this guy's making amazing startup content, breaking down the startup lifestyle. It's like sort of it's really cool. It's like you guys do it's like sort of like travel vlogging because you guys are doing a little bit area, but it's mixed with business and you got like advice. So it's really interesting content. So I highly recommend that you guys go check out him there. But yeah, a little bit of a long intro, but yeah, without further ado, today's guest is G, and it's great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks a lot for having me. I couldn't wish for a better intro.
Awesome. So why don't we just break it down from the basics for people that maybe haven't come across, you're crushing it on LinkedIn, you're doing YouTube, you guys have got a lot of press, but for maybe people that have never heard of you before, where did you grow up? What school did you go to? And what was your first passion?
Wow, that's deep. So I grew up in Paris, France. My parents come from the countryside and they grew up on a farm. They didn't get any degree. So for them, basically, it was very important that I study science because I would get a good degree and then a good job. So I basically got a master in chemical engineering, worked in Scotland for a bit and studying drug discovery and all these type of things. And after that, when I came back to France, I just decided that, I wanted to travel for about a year. But because I had no money, or actually I had done pretty much any job a student can do during my studies to save enough money for the flight tickets. And I decided to use only social network to travel around the world for a year. So I was staying at locals for free in exchange sometimes for work, which was really an awesome experience where I really enjoyed the feeling of being free. So when I got back, I was like, okay, how exactly can you be free, And to me, it was about launching my own business. So because I was an engineer and didn't know nothing about business, I thought, okay, let's go back to business school. So I got a master in marketing, launched my first business with my dad, which was a t-shirt business, massive fail. I was 100% sure back then that whenever you launch a website online, you're going to get sales straight up, which was very stupid when I look at it right now. But we made, I think, about 6 sales when we launched. And after that, it was very difficult. The relationship with my dad kind of suffered at that time because it was a disappointment for them. I knew my parents had sacrificed a lot. My dad took 2 jobs, etc., so we could study, etc. And not being able, to give everything back to him was quite tough. So I decided to launch actually another business with a friend, a lead generation agency. We help customers basically acquiring clients and getting more meetings booked through cold emails, so sending emails to their prospects. And I think we generated a few $1,000,000 for our clients. And then I thought, okay, I've been using all these tools out there. I feel the market is huge. There is an opportunity. So in 2018, I decided to launch Lemlist with my 2 co-founders. And 3.5 years later, we're at 10 million in ARR. And talking about my passion, I'm trying to remember all the questions you asked. So sorry for the monologue. And finishing with passion, I played basketball for 15 years. So I was really passionate about basketball. I was spending most of my nights at the gym playing basketball.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely a credible story. Like you start off engineering, then you get into marketing, and it's like then you get into SaaS, which is like crazy. It's a really interesting journey. So, well, your parents must be super proud of you now that it's sort of like all worked out, and like now you guys are absolutely crushing it, and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my mom being half Italian, she was scared for a lot of time because she thought like, what the fuck? Like you got the best degrees from the best school in France, and now like you have to start a business and not make money. So she was stressed, but step by step, like she realized it was a safe option in the end.
Yeah, and I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that, but I sort of want to jump into that a bit because,
Yeah.
you know, the startup space it's super stressful, and being a a young guy or girl, starting a company, and you know, your parents, like you said, your parents came from a working background. They really wanted you to go to university, get a good job, and you know, all that type of stuff, and you know, sometimes going in another direction and following what you want, like what you love to do and what you know is going to like sort of work out, you know, that must be really stressful. So how did you cope with that when you were first getting started, like, you know, after the t-shirt business and like, you know, starting your next business? Like what was your sort of mentality with it?
I think I think you have to be resilient when you build a business, because in full transparency, I think like I stopped visiting my parents for months. I stopped seeing my friends for also a lot of time, you know, because the only question I was getting every time, you know, I was meeting with someone was like, oh, okay, you're an entrepreneur now, so are you paying yourself yet? And every time, you know, you have to kind of like justify yourself for not paying yourself, because it takes time, like building a company. It takes time, like making money out of it. It takes time, like generating profit. And because I felt really bad about all these things, like I kind of like decided to cut bridges with my close ones. So it was quite tough time, like in the early days, and I was focusing very much on work, which paid off, to be honest. I do think that it would have been a smarter choice to just like educate my closed one and just tell them like, okay, I will let you know whenever I will get paid. But for now, it puts me in the same spot where I feel like weak every time I have to like say that I'm not paying myself, I'm not making money, etc. So in the early days, it was quite tough. But the pride that you get when you start getting your first salary and you can tell people like, oh yeah, I'm getting a salary, I have hired like our first employee, etc., etc., it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's in those beginning days, I think that's where you're really sort of made as like an entrepreneur, right? Is like those hard points, because like if you can get through, you know, the setbacks, the failures, you know, the discomfort of everything that happens in those early days, it's like you can sort of go off and crush anything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's some really good advice there, is just like, you know, narrowing down and focusing on your work, but also, you know, if you had the chance again to sort of explain it better. But I mean, if you're looking in the past tense, that's sort of hard to do, because at the time, to sort of have that conversation, like it's a hard conversation to have, and it's like, you know, are they going to understand it the way that you're explaining it and stuff? So yeah, it's an interesting subject. But yeah, to sort of move on from that, what got you into SaaS? And like you don't, like, this is the interesting thing, like you don't have a, like, do you have a like, I know you have an engineering background, but was that in like computer engineering, or it was just
No,
like?
no, it was really chemistry. So I could, yeah, I was really good at chemistry, really good at drug synthesis and all these type of things. But I had like, I could program in C, which is like very low level computer programming, but very unhelpful whenever you're doing like web things. And I had like, to be honest, no particular like enjoyment, or I was not really like enjoying it, programming or all these type of things. However, after like building my agency, and when I was looking at like the different business model out there of being an entrepreneur, with the agency, I found it super stressful, because you had clients for like 3 months contract, and afterwards you never knew whether or not you would keep them, because some of them would say like, oh yeah, it's fine, like we have enough leads for the next 6 months, but we'll get back to you. Or others were saying like, well, I don't know, not sure, we're going to test another like acquisition channel or whatever. So it was very tough, like to kind of like build and scale a business, especially because agencies and and businesses that requires really like to have a lot of people, it's quite tricky. It's like people business, and I really felt like back then I was way too inexperienced to grow such business. I do think that agencies are great in a sense that you can make money very quickly and validate like a lot of things, get the confidence that you can close clients, make money for yourself, like become a true entrepreneur. But I do think that to scale an agency business, you need to learn really quickly how to work with people, how to structure a team, how to make people stick, how to have clients for like a longer period of time, etc. While when I was checking like the SaaS business model, which is a recurring revenue, I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. This idea of providing tons of value, having people that would just come to your website, sign up, and potentially like become customers because they perceive the value was something very attractive to me. So I just said like, okay, I wanna get in that space and get started.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And SaaS is well, it's been blown up for a while now. Like a lot of people are very, very interested in it, right? So okay, so you saw the business model and you're like, okay, I like this, like it doesn't require me to hire. It's not like a service business where you have to keep requiring, well, I mean, it is a service business, but you don't have to keep requiring to bring on like tons and tons and tons and tons of people, right? Which can get really difficult when you're managed, like, for you to grow, like with the agency, like you were saying, is like for you guys to grow, you're gonna have to bring on like, 5, 10, 15, 20 more people to get to probably the same amount of revenue that you're getting now with a much smaller team, right?
Exactly.
So with that, like, how did you go? Like, can you actually talk about like how did you go about like building your idea? Like, was this your idea, or was it like, did you pitch it to a few friends? Was this for a few friends? Like, I know you have co-founders, so how did that whole process start? And when did you actually say to yourself, you're like, okay, I'm going to start this? Were you also, I do want to mention, were you also running the agency at the same time, or did you shut down the agency and just focus all your energy on this?
So what I did back then is I sold my shares of the agency so I could focus 100% on a new project called Lemlist. And back then, the idea for me was clear. I really wanted to create a better version of the tools that existed, something a bit more innovative, something a bit different, just because I felt like the value proposition of all the tools out there were just about putting your sales on autopilot, which, to be honest, sounds amazing. But for everyone who has done a bit of sales prospecting, that you need to personalize whenever you're sending messages. That you need to spend time on researching the person. That to build relationships, you need to spend that time. And I wanted to be just fully transparent with people, have like a different marketing approach. And even though the market was crowded, I just thought that we could do better. And that's why I launched. We see a lot of people who will be telling you like, if a market is too competitive, like don't go there, etc. For me, I think that it's actually like quite a good sign, because if a market is very competitive, it means that the product market fit already exists, meaning that there is a need for a specific product and there is a market for it, which means that there are tons of competitors. So for example, if you go to like, I don't know, any city in France, I'm going to take a French example. If you would see like bakeries at every corners. If you open a bakery, you're going to make money. That's for sure. Like everyone eat bread, croissant and everything. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, because there are like a few in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? You just need to be better if you want to get like the most customers. And to me, that's the same thing in pretty much any business.
Yeah, 100%. And it sort of comes down to like branding is so huge, right? Like with like those bread shops, it's like you can get to a sort of level where it's like, you can make the best like baguette or croissant, but I mean, like at a certain level, there's going to be a few other shops that are like the same thing, and then that comes down to brand and customer experience, right?
Exactly.
So I sort of want to talk about that, because you guys did, probably a very, very interesting and crazy stunt, which I absolutely love. Like I absolutely love this because, but yeah, it was. I know you talk about it a lot on podcasts, and I know it's like something that you guys talk about a lot, but I just want to talk about it briefly. Was the $30 million raise that you guys did, and then rejected to get massive media attention. So what was the thought process about that? And were you nervous to do that stunt, or was there any like how did it sort of unfold, and like what was your thinking behind it?
So being fully transparent on the story, I was actually having a chat with Nathan Latka on a show, and he was basically telling me, okay, you're bootstrapped, you're highly profitable. Right now, you don't need any VCs. And then I told him like, well, the only reason we would need like investors is to get an article on TechCrunch. And then he laughed and said, well, you could ask a VC to give you a term sheet and then send the term sheet to a TechCrunch journalist and say that you're going to say no to it. And then I laughed. And then I said like, yeah, actually, it's a good idea. And after that, because I started my YouTube channel, I was like, okay, like it's good to give advice to people. And I wanted to do something about fundraising because everyone tells me about fundraising. But then I thought like, okay, why wouldn't we start publicly to announce that we will raise 20 million, see how it happens, document the entire process of me pitching, doing all these things. And if we receive a term sheet, we will say no. But the truth is, as we got started, the thing got totally out of control. I received like hundreds of messages from VCs all over the world after the pitch because I was revealing like all our metrics in really detailed, and we've always been in hyper growth. So the company is quite attractive for investors. And then down the line, you know, like I received the first term sheet, then the second one. So it kind of like went out of control. And my goal was really to show that there are other ways of or other paths to success, that even though the press only shows the startup who are raising the most, you can also build a very, very successful business without having to like raise money, without having to go through that route. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have like a hyper growth, because that's what we had. And by doing that, yeah, as you said, like it got like a huge press PR attention. But most importantly, I had like thousands of messages from bootstrap entrepreneurs, so entrepreneurs who didn't want to raise funds or who were just so thinking about raising funds, and who told me like, thank you for that, because I've been realizing that I was wasting my time for a lot of time trying to raise funds when actually I should be focusing on getting customers.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, and actually, in your YouTube channel, you guys break that down a lot better in detail and with a lot more tons of information, which I highly recommend that you guys go check out. But yeah, no, I absolutely love that, because it's like when you're sort of thinking about a startup, it's like you try and pitch some investors and they turn you down, and then that's so you sort of feel crap, right? You're like, oh, is my idea not good enough or anything like that? Like, you know, like, is this like a proper, you know, fit for market? But then it's like sometimes, you know what? People just aren't going to see the same value that you have, and you know, that you see in this product or service, and just going through and getting those customers is the best thing you can do, right? I sort of want to ask you an interesting question here. So I know you guys got offered $30 million, right? For the company, and with, I think it was like 15 million, so it was like $5 million to each of you, right? So was there a number that you guys would have sold if you got offered it? Like if you guys got offered $10 million each, would you guys would have, you know, sold?
So the real story is that, yeah, so the funding was like 30 million. There would be like $15 million where the money would go inside the company, and 15 million for us, which means that we would have gotten, I think at the time it was for like a 40% stake in the company. So we would have kept the majority of the shares.
Oh, okay.
But being fully transparent with you, we actually like recently did some cash out, which means that we sold 20% of the company, which is something that almost no startup was able to do like in the past. So we sold 20% of our company for $30 million. So recently we got with my two co-founders like 10 million each, which is quite nice. So it's a good way to like de-risk the business and be even more ambitious, because right now we know that actually like, you know, we have enough money not to basically like think of money ever again. So we can just focus on what we love, and we love our company. So it's just about bringing more value, helping more people grow a business, and be as profitable as we are.
Yeah, no, 100%. And once you sort of like that's like, I mean, $10 million is a huge game changer.
Yeah.
So actually talking about that, was that like when you guys got that, was like, because I saw a little bit of the backstory for your two co-founders. They both have families and stuff, and well, one of them has a family, and then I think another one's maybe starting a family. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So like the $10 million, like that's like, like I know if I had kids, like, oh, I'm like, oh crap, like that's like, that's university paid. That's like, everything that they sort of want or need to do is already like, they can do whatever they want, right? Which is huge. So how did that sort of feel when that hit you, when you were like, okay, we're doing this 20, like at the time, was it really like crazy, or how did you sort of feel?
Yeah, it's definitely like a crazy feeling. But to be honest, like the process, even though it was like quite fast, etc., it's to me, I come, like from a background where we didn't have a lot of money, and I thought for a long time like money could be linked to my happiness. Because when I was like younger, I didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't purchase a lot of things, I couldn't travel enough, etc. Like, or I had that feeling. But actually, like growing the company, we started to make like a lot of money. Then we sold our first business actually like a year and a half ago. So we had even more money. I could buy a house in Paris. I could do all the things that I wanted. And then I realized, well, actually, money is not what makes me happy. What makes me happy is building and growing things and providing value to others, and like seeing other people get the same freedoms that I have, I think is the most fulfilling thing that I can feel. So once we got that, obviously, like I was really happy, because I thought that right now everything that I'm gonna do is all about having fun, bringing value to people, and making this project the biggest one we could ever. And I saw that my co-founders had the exact same feeling, which for me is even better, because my two co-founders are a bit older, as you said. They are like on the tech side, which means that I'm the most risk averse, and on their end, they're always been like a, like kind of daddy business type of way. So it's like, let's don't spend too much and all these type of things, which is a great balance. But when you're hyper growing, sometimes you need a bit of craziness, I would say. and basically, like for them right now, it's like, it's okay. They want to hire more, they want to grow the team faster, they want to do all these things so we can just skyrocket our business. And this feeling is just amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. And I know, like you were saying, like the money doesn't really make you happy. Well, I mean, not that it doesn't make you happy, but the really building your business is really amazing. Was there when you got that money, was there anything, I'm sort of just interested, was there anything that you sort of like wanted to have, or anything like that you sort of bought that you really wanted for like a long time, or anything?
It's there are a few things. I bought my first ticket in first class, for like flight ticket, which I think is something I thought I would never do, just because like flying in second class has always been like something normal for me, and I kind of like it. So this is something I did. There is also like I invested about like $1 million in crypto, because I'm a huge believer like in crypto and in that space. Like I've been like watching this for a long time. So yeah, this is the little things.
Oh, awesome. And actually, speaking about crypto, with that, are you also interested? Like, I know you guys have it's like the Lemverse. Lemverse.
Yeah.
So are you guys are getting like into the metaverse and all that type of stuff? Are you personally getting into like NFTs right now, or does that sort of side interest you, or are you not really interested in that?
Yeah, so I'm super interested in Web3, in crypto, in NFTs, and all these topics. I do think that there is a lot of hype around it, a lot of FOMO. So everyone has the fear of missing out the train of there is a new web coming, etc. I do think that when it comes to technological infrastructure, everything is way too slow. So it could work on the actual, we have such a good user experience right now with Web2, that going back to something decentralized that would take like 10 times longer to do. Because if you look at Bitcoin transaction, for example, I don't know, like it's in 1 second, I think they can make like 16 transactions or something like that, which is way too slow. Like you need very different type of bandwidth if you want to create something viable. So what I like though is the mentality and the philosophy behind it. So Web3 is all about like removing, to the monopoly, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc., like the power, and bringing the power to the creators. So if you're building your community, so like you, for example, like people listening to your podcast on Web3, technically, they could directly like give you money because they think that you're doing like an awesome job. You're asking like the good question. They love to listening to you and your guests, so they can support it. You could see that people, who are basically like bringing people together, organizing meetups, events, could also get money out of it. And this is like the philosophy in Web3, where you remove the middleman and the monopoly, and you're just trying to basically like give wealth to more people, and especially to the one we're creating, which I think is really nice as a philosophy. And this is definitely something we will try to apply to our like Lemverse, which is right now like a virtual office where people can just go and meet with us, have a chat with us, etc. It's quite cool. But in the future, we really want to have like more offices, more events, more really cool stuff happening. And down the line, for people within that community who are going to bring value, connect people with others, we really want to also like incentivize them. And down the line, if they can get money out of it, we would have won. Whether it's crypto or not crypto, to me, this is like another debate. I don't have the need, like to just add buzzwords just to get like an investor excited. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, your sort of team has already sort of proved themselves at being like effective at what you guys do, and you guys have that experience right now, right? So I would think a lot of investors would probably be interested in whatever you guys have going on, or any new projects you guys start up, right? So now we're talking a little bit to the advice part. So talk about the company. How do you guys find and keep great talent for your business? Because right now that's something that's a huge conversation with, let's say recruiters and hiring managers, all this type of stuff. Because like keeping great talent right now seems to be a little bit hard. How are you guys approaching that?
I think there are like a couple of things. Is if you want to motivate like the best people to stay, you need to understand what are they looking for. If they are looking for money, potentially joining a startup is not the right option, and you shouldn't like hire people in your startup who are just looking for money. I mean, that's my personal advice. You should always aim for people who are very curious and who are excited about learning. Obviously, you want to pay people the best as possible. Like we try to pay everyone like really well, like above average salary, etc. But you want people who are there not for the money, but because of the learning. And you want to put people with what matters to me and to keep people are two things. The first one is who are people surrounded with. So make sure that everyone in a team works well together, and that you don't hire people with large difference in talent. Because what I've noticed is that when people, when really, really smart people are put in a team where people are a bit lazy, not working as hard, etc., they get demotivated, and that's when they leave. However, if you keep highly talented people all together, you create something amazing, because everyone is basically helping each other to become a better version of themselves. And this is when you build like amazing companies. So to me, like this is like the most important part. And the second part I would say is just make sure to have like a quarterly review with your team, making sure like how they feel, what you can offer them as a future, like making sure that they can also change department easily. So in our team, for example, I think like we've made people change departments so many times, and we don't really care. Like we change people from the sales to the people, from marketing to the people, from so many different things, just because, we feel like people, whenever they're smart, they can adapt anywhere, and that they should follow their true passion. So put people in jobs where they're passionate about, and you never have to worry about whether or not they resign.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, I think that's, I think that's probably some of the best advice I've heard for, like from a CEO on, talent retention and how to, find and keep great talent. Right. Cause like one thing you mentioned that I really agreed with was keeping great talent with great talent, right? If you have somebody who's doing really good and everybody else on the team is not doing the best, then I mean, that can be a little bit, it can bring the person that's really good down, right? Because it's like the other people aren't pulling their weight and stuff, and it creates resentment, right? But if you have great people, everybody's on the same on the same path, same mission, your company explodes. And then the other thing too, I really like that you were saying is like not just locking people down into one position, allowing people to transfer, right? If somebody's in product design, they can go over to sale, like, account executive or something like that, or marketing, or making that switch, right? So I really love that. Now I sort of want to talk about, through all this time, how have you dealt with, I want to talk a little bit about mental health. How have you dealt with stress? Because you're doing so much, you have so many things going on your plate right now. It's a lot of stuff. So I mean, like, at points you must get stressed, or have points when you it's been 3.5 years, but you guys have definitely hit roadblocks and other things that have really sort of stumped you or whatever, right? So how do you approach like stress management and keeping yourself sort of like sane as like you're managing all this crazy stuff that's happening?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that there are a few things that can help. The first thing is how you deal with adversity. Like the way I deal with adversity and whenever I'm facing problems has tremendously evolved in the right direction in the last years, I would say. Because first, when I was facing a problem or something huge, I thought that, okay, it was the end, like the company would be out of business, like it was over and that's it. Now I understand that as an entrepreneur, my role is to solve problems. Once you accept that, the more you face problem, the more you just feel like this is your job and you're excited about it, So now the hardest the times are getting, so the lowest I'm going, the more excited I'm getting, which is quite weird, I have to admit. But the more excited I'm getting, because I know that once you have like the deepest low, this is after these times that you will get the highest highs. And for me, it's really about this mindset of saying that no matter how hard it gets, this is where like the best stories are told. It's like shit, like we were in really like shit hit the fan. It was like the worst time ever. We thought the company would break down. We thought like everything would like be over. And this is a story you want to hear,
Yeah.
So this is what happened basically. And I kind of like switched my mindset. So that's the first thing, which basically like kind of like reduced my stress. Then I think that what's really important is just to, like have time for yourself, like don't burn out. Even if running a business feels like a sprint, in the end, it's a marathon. So for me right now, having a long-term vision, meaning like 5 to 10 years, is so much recomforting because I know that over time, like I don't have to rush on things. And it's much more preferable for me to take my time to take like this really tough decision rather than to rush on things and then, like think that you've done a mistake. So that's like the second thing. Third thing is really like to keep like a healthy environment. So network with as many entrepreneurs as possible, because in the end, we're all facing tons of shit on a daily basis, whether it's management with co-founders relationship, or like business and family and all these type of things. We're all facing the same struggles and having more or less the same journey. So I think it's super important to surround yourself with entrepreneurs. Then fourth is like spend time with family and friends as much as possible, like people who are just outside of the entrepreneurial world, because it's good also to stay down to earth, not forget like the essence of life, the essence of happiness, like the essence of all the simple things that can make you happy. And the fifth thing, I guess, it's try to do like as much sport as possible. But by saying that, I feel like a doctor, so I'm gonna this is not approved by National Health and Safety.
No, like those are some great pieces of advice, right? And I mean, keeping yourself grounded and really keeping your stress and like how you look at stress, that mindset shift is I think is one of the biggest things that you can sort of do that can help your career, right? Looking at like, instead of looking at adversity and getting stressed and anxious over it, being like accepting it and getting excited for it, which I mean is hard to do. It's hard to make that switch just on like, you know, in a second. It takes time to get that mental sort of in order, right? But yeah, like when you were telling that, it sort of reminded me a bit about a Joe Rogan podcast that was talking about that, and he was saying some of like, there's like some of the best stories or some of the best times or some of the funnest times actually are times like in the moment when it actually sucked, but then you look back on it with your friends and it's like a good laugh, right? And that's something probably you can relate to. Like, I don't know, when you were traveling, when you were first traveling around the world, right? Like you probably ran into some problems. You're like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, you know, like we can't get a place to stay, or, you know, something's happened. But then, you know, when you meet up with those friends again and you're having a few beers or whatever, or right, and you talk about them, you're like, oh, I remember that time when, you know, like we got locked out of our building or something and we couldn't get back in, and it was just like, you know, it was like 3 a.m. in the morning or something, like these crazy times, right? But yeah, I absolutely loved it.
This is very good analogy.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, so we're coming to the end here. I've just got 3 more questions for you. So talking a little bit more about sort of like sort of the day-to-day, right? Is like, so what was your best day and what was your worst day that you've experienced in your life? If you feel comfortable talking about that.
Okay, that's deep question.
Yeah.
You mean in the last 3.5 years of being an entrepreneur, or my entire life?
Yeah, in your entire life. I'm interested to hear, but you don't have to go into detail if you don't want to. I know it's a very personal question.
I would say, to be honest, I think one of my best day was the day I realized that I could be free running like the things that I love to do. So I think this is like a fulfillment that I had never like felt in my entire life, just because I don't know, you know, for a lot of time, depending on where you grew up, etc. But I never had like entrepreneurs in my family or like role models around me. So for me, you know, I thought that it would never be possible to achieve like these things. I almost got expelled from high school like many times, all these type of things. So for me, having this journey of, you know, like, okay, this is it, you know, like no matter what happened next, like you can do the things you love and get paid for that and be free, you know, like you don't have to work for someone. It's you making your own decision. So true freedom is something that I think I appreciated the most. And obviously it's not one day, because I had this feeling like many times, either in nature or in other things, but it's something that I would say like that makes me truly happy. And the toughest or the saddest or toughest day in my entire life, I think it's during our journey with my best friend when we traveled the world. I almost died like many times, like for at least a few times. And I guess those are the times like that were the toughest. One day we got like we took like a very shitty car and we didn't have a map, and we went through like a desert thinking that the road was okay, but actually the road is not okay for a shitty car in desert. So we got like stuck in the middle of nowhere, not in a safe road, in the middle of the night. The car got stuck in the sand. And this was like a time where I thought we were going to die, like literally, because we couldn't do anything, and there were no like civilization like at I don't know how many kilometers. So that was a scary time.
I bet. But I mean, you made it out, right? So how I'm actually interested here. So how did you guys make it out of that? Did you get it unstuck, or did somebody come by? Or?
Yeah. I think I spent like I don't know how many hours getting like wood out of like a certain like forest a bit farther, so I could just put like wood under the wheels, and I started like digging for like hours under the car to just like dig it out from the sand, and then we managed to put it back onto a sort of track, and we were out of it. But I think like for 8 hours I thought that we were going to die, like because we didn't have any food, we didn't have like any water left, and we knew that the nearest village was maybe like I don't know, like 100 kilometers away. So if we would have walked, it would have just like be like really terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No.
Yeah.
No. Like, that's absolutely crazy. So yeah. So
Advice here: get a map and
yeah.
get like a good phone that has like a network. You know, even in the desert.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So yeah. So another question. Are you still good for time? I know it's 10:45.
Yeah, I don't have a hard stop. No worries. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, something that I want to know now is, so with a SaaS company, what is overrated about running a SaaS company, or like, let's say a startup, and what is underrated about starting a SaaS company?
I think what is overrated is what people like think about the life of an entrepreneur. So everyone think that successful entrepreneurs have, you know, like models and bottles and making parties all the time because they make like so much money, etc., etc. The truth is like your job is to solve problem, and solving problem is what most people don't want to do. So in the end, you have to deal with a lot of shit your entire life, you know? So it's part of the game. So, you know, this kind of super nice life of the entrepreneur just going into meetings saying, yeah, let's do that, I've got a big vision, and that's it. It's not the case. And what's underrated, I think it's how much you learn and how many cool people you can meet along the way. Because to me, like what I love about entrepreneurship is, you know, like this type of conversation. We share, we exchange, we're like thousands of kilometers away. You're in Canada, I'm in France. This is amazing, you know, like this is what I love about the internet. This is what I love about the startup world, being able to connect with people around the world. Like this is awesome. And I think not enough people talk about it.
Yeah. No. Awesome. I love that. And the last question here I want to ask you about before we end. So what is one question that you wish people asked you more?
That's another good question. A question I wish people ask me more.
Could be about entrepreneurship, your life experiences, anything in general.
I don't want to say something very basic, but but I think like the question I like to ask, and what people are often afraid like to ask, is like what's your biggest failure this year, or something like that, you know, just because I think we tend to connect even more on failures from people rather than successes, because what makes someone successful is not going to make you successful. So people try to learn from people based on their success, but I think I learn more from people from their failures. So this is something that I love to ask, and I think like people don't ask it enough because they think that it's an uncomfortable question. But I do feel like when you start sharing your struggles, you connect on a much more emotional way with people, rather than when you talk about successes and yeah, we got 30 million, our company is worth X. Yes, of course, it feels good, you know, like yeah, but in the end, you don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the failures is where you're sort of that's where the story, like you're saying, the stories come from, but it's also the connect, like you were saying, the connection of people sort of understand that it's like, because people might look at you and be like, oh, you know, this is a young guy, he's got it made, you know, like you had the $10 million, you're running an amazing company, you live in Paris, like all this sort of stuff. But like I think really showing your failures sort of humanizes you more, right? It's just being a normal person, right? Like, I mean, you're just a normal person that you just found what you love to do, and you're just doing that day after day after day. So I sort of want to talk on that for last like couple seconds here. Is what was your biggest failure that this year, as we're wrapping sort of up, that you learned the most from?
I think that my biggest failure was following the hype, or getting like hyped by my surroundings. So you know, like we've always been hyper growing, but after a certain scale, like when you cross 1 million ARR, everyone starts thinking like, okay, now after 1 million, you've done what 99% of the companies won't ever be able to do. You're in the big game now, big league. So from 1 to 10, we started to scale like super rapidly. And at some point, we were about like 20 in the company. And when I started talking about like other friends, and they were asking me, like, oh yeah, like how's the business going, etc. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's going good. And then they were like, yeah, how many people are you? Because people always ask that. After asking, are you paying yourself? When they know it, there's like, how many people in the company? And to me, this is vanity metrics. However, when you start having like a company with more than 20 people start being like, oh, wow, that's good. It started to be like big and bigger. And as we grew, I realized that the more people we had in the company, the more social currencies, I would say, I would have, meaning that we grew from 20 to 30 in like a few months, then to 30 to 40. And then everyone was like, oh man, that's amazing. It's crazy how quickly you're growing, etc. And I got, hyped by all of this. And the hype, I think, forced me to hire like way too fast, which made us hire like the wrong person. We kind of like diluted the culture. So because whenever you hire the wrong people or people who don't fit with your culture and company, down the line, it doesn't work. Like your culture gets changed, and not for the right reasons. As I was mentioning, like you're putting less qualified people with highly talented ones. So you're kind of like demotivating the team, etc. And I would say that the biggest failure was this part, because it pushed me at some point to just like make a full stop and say, okay, how many people should we let go? Making the transition of these people towards new company, etc. And it's the hardest things to do, because all of the people we hired, obviously we like them. We spent awesome quality time with them. They're funny, they're cool, etc. But they were not a fit, and letting all these people go was really tough. So I would say like getting hype and having like these things was really like the biggest failure for this year.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I mean, like that, and I love that you shared that, right? Because that's something that like you learned from, right? That other startups that have maybe got to your level, right? And it's like that sort of thing, right? It's like how much, like it like, people are asking, how much are you getting paid for your salary? How many people are growing? And it sort of like feeds into that ego a bit.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like, can end up causing like, hiring the wrong people for your company, right, which can cause effects. But like you explained that, I really appreciate that, because that's like, that's going to help other entrepreneurs. If they, when they listen to this, they can hear about this and be like, okay, yeah. So it's like, don't feed into the, I mean, it's hard to do, right? Like you hit a certain point where you're like, everybody around you is like giving you a pat on the back, and everybody's being like, yeah, like popping, like, not like popping bottles, but like, I mean, like everybody's like super exciting. You just start, it's like a weird feeling, right? It's like, am I as good as everybody's saying I am? Like, is this true? Is this not? Is it like, it's a lot, but it's a really interesting point. And I love how you figured out how to navigate that. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, G. You've dropped so much knowledge, and I love to hear about your story. You have a very unique story. And yeah, I absolutely love that. Guys, if you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate you guys making it to the end. If you guys can leave a review, it helps out a ton with the guests that come on the show, and also my podcast. And I highly recommend that you go check out G's YouTube. I'll tag it in the links below. You guys can go over there and check him out, because he's doing some amazing stuff. But yeah, thank you again, man, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Max. And for everybody listening, make sure to put 5 stars to Max. He's a cool guy.
Awesome.